Why do I let you talk me into these things? Last time on AutomaTitan Cracks One Out, we took a look at the best game to ever star HR Giga's Xenomorph, Alien Isolation, and as promised at the end of that video, it's time for the first ever two-part Cracks One Out. You see, we need some context to fully explain why Alien Isolation was such a breath of fresh air. I went into all the reasons I love it because subtitle guys too scared to play it, but to fully understand why it hit me like a bolt of lightning, we need to look at the previous Xenomorph related game, a game that, you know what, I don't even need to do a preamble here. You all know I'm talking about Aliens Colonial Marines, and you all know it was sodding terrible, but the thing is, it shouldn't have been. I don't mean that in the sense of, not like this, please, not like this. Although that is true as well. No, I mean it in the sense of, well, Colonial Marines should have been the safest bet in history. It had the most iconic space monster of them all. It was a continuation of a movie pretty much everyone adores. It had 4 original cast members in its voice cast. Hell, it even had the iconic sound of the M41A pulse rifle. So what I mean is that it shouldn't have even been possible for Aliens Colonial Marines to fail, and for any developer, no matter how ham-fisted, to balls up such an easy win. And yet, somehow, Gearbox did just that. Thus, we need to ask the big question. Aliens Colonial Marines, what the hell went wrong? To begin with though, it might be worth taking a look to see if Aliens Colonial Marines actually did anything right. Blimey, this is hard. Like, really hard. Harder. Stop it. No subtitle guy. This is like trying to play Dark Souls while in a medical coma, or worse, while being a games journalist. Oh wait, I've got one. The game isn't actually that bad if you mod it. There's a huge mod out there that changes the really big problems with the game and makes it exponentially better. Wait, no. That's not a positive, is it? I mean, if you have to mod it for it to be even remotely decent, then it's not a good game, is it? Dark Souls doesn't need to be modded, Doom doesn't need to be modded, neither do Witcher 3, Monster Hunter World, the Just Cause games, Dead Space. Look, we'll be here all day if we keep this up, so let's just say that the vast majority of games do not need to be modded to be good. Meanwhile, Colonial Marines does. That is not a good selling point, Gearbox. And besides, modding it may make the gameplay better, but it sure as hell won't fix the missteps in the story. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to video games, they don't necessarily need the most complex, narratively deep story imaginable. We said as much in a video we made about 10 months ago, but the thing about Colonial Marines is that it was billed as the official follow-up to James Cameron's Aliens right from day one. So you know, if it's the official follow-up to an absolute stone cold classic, the story is somewhat fucking important. Okay, I'll be charitable and say that not all of the game's story problems are its own fault. It's partly due to the sodding enormous plot hole at the start of Alien 3 with the facehugger egg that somehow magically ended up on the USS Sulaco like the fucker teleported there just to shag Ripley. Considering David Fincher went on to make Fight Club, I think we can assume that fuck up came from studio interference. So, Colonial Marines had that as a starting point, but even then, they could have crafted an interesting story that explained the discrepancy between the end of Aliens and the start of Alien 3. They could have done that, but they didn't. Let's start with the continuity fuck-ups and the colony on LV-426, where shit went down in Aliens. That colony is Hadley's Hope, and the heroes hide in the remains of it during the game, but there's just one teeny tiny little problem. You see, the atmosphere processor blew up at the end of the film, and we know how big the blast was because Bishop told us, 40 megatons. Only 10 megatons lower than the biggest bomb ever set off on planet Earth, with a blast radius of about 30 kilometers. Now, it's never explicitly said how far away the atmosphere processor is from Hadley's Hope, but I'll tell you this, it wasn't fucking 18 miles away. Yeah, the problem with hiding in the remains of Hadley's Hope is that there shouldn't fucking be any remains of Hadley's Hope. Oh, but it gets worse, because somehow, by fucking magic, despite being ground zero for what amounted to a 40 megaton nuke, the atmosphere processor survived too. Bull fucking shit. The entire area was melted down to beaded fucking glass. How precisely were they planning to hide though? Stand really fucking still and hope the xenomorph didn't notice them? They're not fucking T-Rexes. There's numerous other fuck-ups too, like Hicks wearing his undamaged armour, despite it getting melted by acid blood and abandoned in the film. And that's just the continuity balls-ups. We haven't even begun to speak about the actual honest-to-God plot holes yet. We're using the AVP wiki for this section, since they've conveniently listed all the fuck-ups for us. Full props go to them, and the link is in the description. So plot holes. There's quite a lot. Why did it take the USS Sephora 17 weeks to reach LV-426 after getting the distress call sent by Hicks, especially when Hicks clearly stated in the movie that a rescue ship would arrive in 17 days even without a distress call being sent? Why did Weyland-Yutani set up a hive on the Sulaco when they'd already fucking set one up on LV-426 near the alien derelict from the first film? Why did Michael Bishop go to Fury 161 to get the Queen inside Ripley when they already had another sodding Queen on LV-426? But hey, at least Gearbox decided to cut out an essential bit of the story and sell it to us later as DLC. You know, the really sodding crucial bit that would actually explain the link between the end of Aliens and the start of Alien 3. Oh, who am I kidding? It did no such thing. It just introduced a whole new raft of fuck-ups, didn't it? Like when their explanation for Hicks not being dead was essentially that some other random tit in his underwear ended up in that particular hypersleep tube. Well, since I think Subtitle Guy's about to actually die from this cobblers, maybe it's time to move on. You can check out the raft of cock-ups via the link in the description. And anyway, this is a video game, so we can overlook a piss-poor story if the gameplay's up to snuff. Right?
Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey.
Oh,
Hello, my ragtime
wow,
gal.
shit.
Kiss my wine.
The story was bad enough, but now we've reached the point where Colonial Marines ceases to be just a shit game and becomes a cautionary tale. Colonial Marines was formally announced in February of 2008, and then went on to be delayed for 5 whole years before finally going on sale in February of 2013. That's not necessarily a warning flag, but in hindsight, after the game went on sale we should have seen the signs. With an overwhelmingly negative response at launch, and with a Metacritic user score that currently stands at 3.5 out of 10, it seems pretty bloody clear that as well as being god-awful in terms of story, Colonial Marines is fucking useless at being a video game. It almost boggles my mind how much you would have to do wrong in order to balls up a sure bet like this so comprehensively. Looking through the Metacritic user reviews, the consensus seems to be that the atmosphere is awful, the gunplay feels wrong, and the game's way too easy because the AI and the xenomorphs is utterly gutter-fucked. On top of that, there's the graphics, which are a massive downgrade compared to the footage in the teaser trailer, to the point where there was a class action lawsuit against Gearbox and Sega for false advertising. Oh, and believe it or not, the AI in Colonial Marines is still making headlines, thanks to a modder who went poking through the game's INI files and found that the gutter-fucked AI was caused by one typo. One single typo. So we can assume that as well as being allergic to continuity, Gearbox is also allergic to fucking quality control. And thus, we come back to the same question yet again. How in the name of Christ is that even possible? How can you possibly ball something up that badly? Well, it turns out that in this case, we may actually know why. Now, before we get into it, I need to add in a little disclaimer. What we're about to say is based on a Reddit post from 2013 that claimed to be from an anonymous Gearbox employee. So it remains completely unverified, and there is of course a very high chance that it's not even remotely true. Having said that, it does fit the timeline of events almost perfectly, and would neatly explain damn near all of the problems in Aliens Colonial Marines, so you know, make of that what you will. Anyway, it's a really long post, and subtitle guy started coughing up blood ages ago, so we'll summarise. Does that mean you'll stop whining about not being paid? Right then, here's the extremely short summary. Gearbox kept pushing it back and delaying it so they could make Borderlands 2 instead. Clearly, that was the game Gearbox cared more about, and as a result, they farmed out development to other companies. Timegate would handle the campaign, and Gearbox would handle the multiplayer, while Demiurge and Nerve took on DLC duties. And then, presumably because Gearbox are also allergic to this thing called planning, the development cycles for Borderlands 2 and Colonial Marines managed to line up, leaving them in a position where there was no way they could finish up and ship 2 games at the same time.
Now you fucked up!
So Gearbox went back to Sega and asked for one last 9-month extension so they could get the game finished. And what did they do with this 9 months extra breathing room? What a silly question. They used 5 months of it to finish Borderlands 2, of course, and not the fucking game the extension was supposed to be for. At the same time, Timegate's work came back and it was shoddy as fuck, if this account is to be believed. All of which left Gearbox in a position where they had 4 months left to finish the entire thing, and they had to redo some of Timegate's work.
Now you fucked up!
The only option was to basically ignore any bugs or problems that didn't 100% break the game, because there was literally no time to do anything else. We all saw the end result, a game that was barely finished before Gearbox shot it out into the wild, a game so monumentally fucked and with such a glaring lack of quality control that the AI killing typo was missed. Put it this way, when you make the official continuation of a well-loved story in a beloved franchise, only for the franchise owner to then declare it non-canon, well...
Now you fucked up! Now you fucked up! Now you fucked up! You have fucked up now!
So is there anything really left to say about Aliens Colonial Marines? It might be worth getting if it's ever free in a humble bundle, but I don't think it's worth buying, and remember that if you do get it, you'll need to mod it to make it halfway decent. The only positive thing we can say is that it makes Alien Isolation look even more of a masterpiece by comparison. So basically, there is only one rating we can give this abortion of a game, and that is nuke the entire site from orbit.
What's wrong?
And on that 40 megaton bombshell that somehow magically leaves the target still intact, it's time to end. Thanks very much for watching. I am AutomaTitan, and remember, if you plan out a really epic outro to a video, one that involves xenomorphs and 30mm grenades, and you blowing yourself up alongside your subtitle minion, then for the love of God, don't try to put it at the end of a video about Colonial Marines, because you'll find you can't actually be asked to make it. So fuck it. Bye!
Check, please.